I would even amp it up even further because I wrote this book, Second Class, where I traveled around the country for a year
Hmm.
interviewing working class people from across the political perspective spectrum. And what I found was like there's huge consensus in the working class. Like all polarization is an elite phenomenon, effectively. Like there's just no polarization among working class people. Some of them disagree on certain things. You know, some people like Trump, some people don't like Trump. But the idea of hating someone over their politics is like totally foreign to people who don't have a college degree. They by and large they agree on the issues. So they agree on abortion, 15 weeks. They agree on immigration. They want much less of it. They agree on healthcare. They want much more of it. Like there's just no polarization among working class people. And so to me, it's like amped up because I'm like, you have the elites in the media who are telling one story and it's the totally wrong story. And then the vast majority of Americans who have been left out of it. And so when I become very scathing in my critique, I feel like I'm actually representing people who don't have a voice, who are like the majority of Americans who have been totally erased. And this is whether they're Democrats or Republicans. So it even amps it up even more, like the desire to sort of speak this truth, because I really feel like I'm speaking truth to power on behalf of the powerless, and that our democracy hangs in the balance. Like you cannot have a democracy without a stable middle class, and we have a shrinking middle class. So
Yeah.
it like amps up even the conflict even more. And it is such a great question when I ask myself every day, what,
Because you feel that sense of responsibility towards those people.
and that they have been silenced and degraded, and the American dream has been stolen from them by a bunch of millionaires who lie. And like, so that there's something in that construct that is like very true. And yet is the thing my country needs from me right now to speak in a language that those lying millionaires could potentially hear to bring down the temperature. I mean, that is the like the real conflict here is like I'm always railing against the elites, especially the over credentialed elites in the top 20%. I have like huge criticisms of the way that they have mobilized the language of social justice to dispossess working class people of all races and put money in their own pockets. And I,
Mm.
this critique is, I think it's 100% accurate. And yet people criticize me and say, you can't just throw these people away. Like your whole language of more unites us than divides us. Like speak to them, give your critique in a way that they too can understand it and can accept it. And I have seen this like since the book came out, like I have had, I want to say, 5 or 6 conversations with leftist, liberal people in media where I was able to get them to go, huh, I never thought of Trump that way. Like
Hmm.
that is a huge victory. And
Well, right there, let me just ask you if I just put a finer point on the question. What is your objective in representing those people? Like what do you think success looks like when you're delivering that scathing critique? Is it for that person to maybe understand, you know, the perspective of a Trump supporter? What would you say success looks like?
well, success for me would look like a reversal of the enormous class divide in America, where you have the top 20% controlling over 50% of the GDP and, 98% of the political agenda. And the reason that I feel motivated to do
Mm-hmm.
that is religiously, spiritually, morally, but also I believe in democracy. I'm very scared about our democracy. And the thing that makes the democracy work and strong and stable is that, people feel represented. And right now they don't feel represented because they're not represented. So the goal is to reverse the class divide. And how do you do that? By bringing the working class agenda back into the mainstream, which has been co-opted by the elites. So giving them a voice to me is giving voice to these concerns and making them unignorable again, to reverse that class divide where so much power and money is concentrated in the top.
Yeah, no, I asked that question, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, part of the reason for the show is for different guests to be able to articulate why they pursue the work they pursue. I'm very interested in the question of why, because I think to build hope in this world, to try to build a sense of purpose, I think everybody's got to hear, well, here's why Batya does what she does. And in particular, last week I was at I was speaking to a bunch of high schoolers in Oklahoma at this like leadership institute, right? And they were asking the question, when is violence justified? And again, it goes to this point of, when is scathing critique justified? Should you have scathing critique right now, or should you try to, hold hands, right? If you took it the all the way the opposite direction. And to me, I think the fundamental question becomes, well, what is your objective, and what is the road that we need to take at this moment to get there? And I think my argument would be that at this moment, where I think we're fundamentally in a battle between how you create change. I think most people are on your side of, they might disagree with your diagnosis, but I think most people are on the side of, we got to shake up the status quo in some way. And I think that there's two ways to create change, right? You've got this zero sum sort of like, I win. It's not even I win, because that creates self-serving, and I think it doesn't do justice to your position. It's like, we need to forward this perspective right now, because if we don't do it right now, the other side wins. And the alternative is, we got to create coalitions of change to be able to bring people very different perspectives together into one alignment. And I think you would probably make the argument that, because your focus on the working class enables you to tackle polarization in a different way, you're actually building those coalitions. Is that broadly accurate?
Yeah, but also, no, I totally think having the conversation is extremely important. And I've advocated for keeping far left views in the discourse and in the public discourse
Right.
because
Right.
they represent a certain percentage of our population and thus they deserve to be heard. The problem is that they now, basically they've kind of taken over like, the discourse, right? And so, but if we were in a situation where there was a sizable chunk of Americans who identified with a certain worldview and they were being deplatformed, I would fight for them as well because I totally agree with you. In a larger sense, a sort of galaxy brain sense, the goal is not just to shrink the class divide, but it's to shrink the class divide without violence, right? It's to shrink the class divide through discourse, through conversation, through organizing, right?
Mm.
Through coalition building, as you're saying, right? Like that, 100%. It is to find ways to, be Americans is how I would put
Mhm.
that, right? And what it means to be in America is fundamentally to commit to the idea that you only deserve to win if you convince people. You only deserve to win if you have made the case successfully to more people than doubt what you're saying. That is what I think that is a definition of being an American, right? That is our First Amendment. And that is why it exists. And I feel that so deeply, especially about the people who I disagree with. I could say this, most obviously when it comes to like Israel Palestine, like those people I
Mhm.
disagree with belong at the table. I mean, they have much more of a seat than they have earned because of the way that our elite systems work and our universities work, right? But if they were, when people try to say, silence them through non-democratic means, I don't like that. And I oppose that very, very vociferously.
Mhm.
Same thing with these elites, you want to make the case for open borders. You want to convince Americans that we should have radically more immigration. Do that. The problem is that they have used institutions to circumvent the will of the people. That's not acceptable. And so we should speak up against that. But I think we're sort of agreeing that in the larger sense, the goal, the reason I do what I do is because this is the greatest country on earth, and we have to make sure that it stays that way. And doing that means
Mhm.
embracing what it means to be an American, which means committing to the only way to achieve political ends is through conversation,
That's
through
right.
speech, and through debate.